Laura and I are both here at Te Papa. It's lovely to have you all with us today. The plan for today is to talk a little bit about virtual explorers as we run them. So these are virtual programs that we run basically using a kind of conference call thing, using Zoom specifically. But it's a way of us being able to live stream programs to people anywhere in the world, and we have been doing it to people all over the world. So Laura is currently armed with something that looks a little bit like this, which is the Steadicam for her phone. So that means that she can swing things around. This one is currently off, but if it's on, then the magnets allow for a kind of Steadicam effect. And it means that she can take us on a really beautiful journey through the museum. So I might just hand over to Laura now, and she can take us on a journey through the museum, talk a little bit about what she does and what she's going to show us.
I'm Laura, and I'm going to be showing you a really brief excerpt of what a Virtual Explorer program works, how it looks for us and how it works for us. So we have the camera set on us, obviously, to introduce ourselves, and I think that's really, it's really, really important that we get that kind of personal connection, even though we're offering a program virtually, and I could be talking to a school, many, many miles away on the bottom of the South Island, but at least there's a sense of a personal connection with me. And it's also really, really nice to sort of talk about the fact that we're doing this in real time. This is not a recording. I think that sort of helps the experience too, and helps people to feel like they are completely involved in it. So definitely getting the personal in is really, really useful right from the get-go. But obviously they haven't really come to look at the person delivering. So at a certain point, after you've done your introductions, you may have set the scene in some other way, you flip the camera, and then they get to see what you see. And that's how you phrase it, really. You're now looking at what I can see. And it's really, really useful to do this. And what I do is, as I'm doing with you now, I'm sort of panning around Te Papa. I'm giving people a sense, it's almost like a piece of theatre, I guess, that you're sort of prepping for here. I find it quite useful to do that. As much as you can do to create a sense of personal connection and to create a sense that this is actually a privileged program. It's not a program that you do when you can't physically get to the museum, although it is that as well, but there's something extra special about it. And one of the things I often do as well is just set the scene with looking through windows at Wellington, bearing in mind that I'll be talking to students who don't necessarily, who haven't been to Te Papa, haven't been to Wellington before. So I find that quite a nice thing to do as well. And that always works very well. Sometimes we just talk a bit about the weather, what it's looking like out there today, and I might ask them what the weather's like wherever they are. So that's a nice thing to do too. Setting the scene is also important here, just like showing what the outside of the exhibition looks like. That's really, really important as well. And we're just going to spend a bit of time here. Now, it's worth noting that there are some of the pitfalls that there are, certainly with this exhibition, is the noise spill. So you might have to think about that. But I wanted to come here because what you can do is really do something very kind of effective in terms of getting students to focus on what you want them to focus on. So as we move around this large figure, 2.4 times the size of a human, these giant figures, and of course, most of you, I'm sure, would have seen this exhibition. This is Lieutenant Spencer Westmacott. But I just wanted you to see how we can manage these kind of spaces in a way that's quite different when you have a physical group of students in front of you. So your ability is to pan. So you can step right back and pan along and do a really slow pan. Now, because I am doing a slow pan, I'm in effect forcing the students to do a slow pan with me. You are kind of the, you're in the same way as a filmmaker is in control of the shot, you are too. And actually that can be very, very powerful. So we can do a really, really kind of like step back and do a pan over the figure from a distance. And then I can actually start to ask questions about this figure with the students. And I might say, for example, can you see where you find that there's some blood? And I might just pan around deliberately in all sorts of places. And then, of course, they will spot some blood. And then I can, once they've done that, and I do like to make this as interactive as possible. So I'll ask lots of questions and get responses so that it stops, prevents it from being too passive, if you like, and too didactic, the Virtual Explorer program. And I can ask questions, and I can zoom in when they notice blood. Now I can go really close to this figure. I'm not touching it, and I can make that point as well with the students. But remember, I've got control of the camera, so I can actually get students to focus on what I want them to look at. If I physically had a group of students, I could do the same thing, of course, but not all of them would be focusing in the same way. So there's quite a lot of potential to really, really kind of develop children's kind of focusing and looking skills. As we come up here, we're looking at the face, we're looking along the direction of the arm. But what is great again is that I can come in here. Now, again, I'm not touching, but I can do this. Now, what I can do there, of course, is again, I'm choosing where to point the camera. It means I can put the camera really close into the mouth without touching. And you can sort of, hopefully the students and hopefully you can spot details like the moisture on the tongue. As well as things like the bristle on the face of Spencer Westmacott. If I come around here, we can really, really focus in. Hoping you're catching this. I'm not sure if you are actually. On other models, it can come out a bit more clearly. Sometimes you have to be aware of what the light is doing. But you can sort of hopefully see hairs on the arms as well. Now, that allows you to have a conversation about, how the structure, how the models were made. So I find this really, really useful as a technique, actually. And in an exhibition like Gallipoli, where there's so much that can compete for your attention, and where a lot of our job is actually trying to get a group of students to really focus, this can be quite a really, really useful tool. So as we go into the second space, what I can do is say, we're going to look down. I just noticed somebody saying scale without a reference, and you're absolutely right. I forgot to say that you can also put your hand in here. So you can get a sense of this hand and my hand. Actually, the trouble is you kind of like have to get the right scale. There we go. Okay. So that's how you get that kind of sorry, just getting told off by the host there, but I didn't touch. So that is a good point. You can actually kind of like use your own hand to kind of give a sense of the scale. Of course, scale is particularly important here, but it may not be relevant for the exhibitions that you have. Anyway, back to this point. Yeah, I can get students to really focus on some information that's actually on the floor about how many people were dying right at the landing of Gallipoli. So in fact, it's quite a useful tool, as I said, to kind of in an exhibition where there's many distractions, to actually kind of get students to focus on where I want them to focus. And so you can actually build up a really convincing narrative using the Virtual Explorer programs. If I want to talk about, for example, if I come to this space, I might have students very distracted by the kind of like the lights that are taking in the flashes that are on this exhibit here. But if I want them, first of all, to focus on actually who are the people who are at Gallipoli, I can do that because I can move the camera up and look at the flags of the people. So I'm hoping you can see that, you know, by my demonstrating that actually there are some really kind of positive aspects of Virtual Explorer programs that I can actually kind of like really celebrate. Now, I'll just flip the camera. That's what I do at the end, of course, of any program, flip the camera and say goodbye. It's also where you might take some questions. And we can talk about how that all works in a moment when I'm back up in Hinachori. So I'll see you later.
Great, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Laura. Excellent. So that's, in very brief form, the kind of thing that we do with Virtual Explorer. The main kind of starting point is to have yourself a gimbal type thing like this, or some kind of Steadicam device. And they are becoming a lot more common now. So you can pick them up from, I think, kind of about $150 to $300 or something will get something which is the right kind of thing, depending on who you're getting it from. There's PB Tech will supply them, and you can get them from AliExpress and places like that as well. So there's lots of different options with them, but they all pretty much do the same thing. It's just a series of electromagnets that allow you to keep the phone still no matter where you move it. And it's an awful lot easier on your arm, and it just makes a much smoother experience at the other end of the call, which is really nice. When we started doing it, we often did it with headphones, which can sometimes help as far as like noise spill and things go, but we found that it doesn't necessarily help the quality of experience that much, but it's worth playing with, depending on how noisy the spaces you are working in are, and we've been really enjoying just how flexible it is. We've been able to deliver it to schools all over New Zealand. We've had people getting in touch with us from Bangladesh and China and Australia and the States, and with a little bit of figuring out with time zones and stuff, we've been able to make sessions work for people from all over the world, which is really lovely.
There is a great deal of value in scene setting and in thinking about this as like a mini film that you're making. And I know it may sound pretentious, but I don't mean it to. It's just that you have got control of what they view, and you can really make that work to your advantage. But the fact that we will have students who will be zooming into us from Invercargill, Gore, Northland, and who will never have been to Te Papa or Wellington before. I think that's really quite powerful, to actually place yourselves in this space that they haven't actually been to, and by doing that, and like I said, also establishing a relationship. It actually ends up being quite a good experience. It doesn't feel like a second-class experience, and that was always my concern, was that to avoid this feeling like, oh, I can't physically get into Te Papa. Oh well, all right, we'll just do this then instead. So what you're doing is you're really creating a separate, different, special experience, and yeah, that's where my that's where most of my thinking is at the moment too. How do we enlarge that? If you see people who are cleaning, if you're doing this before the museum or gallery opens and there are people cleaning, make sure you say hello and wave at them, and then they wave back, and that's really lovely. Like, it's just such a really, because you're telling a story of the museum and the people that work behind the scenes. These are people you don't normally see, and it just adds to the sense of a special occasion.
Yeah.
It's definitely on screen, and we send that as a recommendation. As when we send the confirmation email, we say how the best way to set these things up is this. So yeah, the teacher will generally kind of be projecting us onto a screen. So that's one of the issues, I think, is that for us, for the person who's delivering, you don't actually see very much. So that's I find that a little tricky, because it's quite nice. I do like to see the people that I'm talking to, and so you'll get a very tiny. You're looking at a phone screen, and you're looking at a tiny screen within that. But absolutely, what they get is a much better experience, really. And yeah, like I said, so imagine that you're zooming into Spencer Westmacott's mouth. That's going to come up massively on the screen. So I think it's a really good experience for them. It's not great for the person delivering because of the aspect of not actually seeing, but you get over that. And also you find ways of kind of getting the students to communicate with you, so you can't necessarily see their faces and read their signals, but if you've set it up so that somebody is going to be usually not writing questions in the chat. Well, they can do, but you're probably not going to be able to read those as well as deliver. I'd say stick to the delivery, and then questions can come afterwards. And that's when you say you suggest to the kayak, well, it's either you or you select a student to come up and ask questions. They have to come and speak very closely into the microphone, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, we find the other reason why our little phone to one screen at the teacher's end or the class's end or the learner's end is good, is because we found whenever you have one-to-one devices, then the people never communicate. As soon as people are sharing devices and sharing screens, it forces them to actually communicate and be a lot more conscious of their place in the room. So when we insist that the teacher or whoever it is at the other end kind of facilitates that conversation. So if sound isn't very good, it means you've got one teacher or one person facilitating the experience who can say, oh, excuse me, your sound isn't very good, can you repeat that? Or they can ask those clarifying questions on behalf of their class, which allows a much kind of easier transmission of information. Whereas the expectation is if you have a whole lot of kids, each with their own screen, they'll kind of be staring like this.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point. Yeah, sorry. We absolutely. I think that's very important to say that shared experience is really what you're wanting to create. That's what's quite powerful about this. And actually, if anything, you can potentially create I'm going to say maybe more of a shared experience, because you have quite a lot of control over what they're all looking at together, as against a group of students who will be, looking all over the place and often not where you want them to look at. So, you actually have kind of power, shall we say, to kind of create that shared experience. And I heard you mention it wasn't Bangladesh, it was Bangalore, in India. But in that situation, so I was talking to 80 students and 10 teachers there, and they're in full lockdown, so they're not in school. So all of those students were separately on my screen.
Right.
And that was quite strange. I mean, they had it was great, but I do think, they have their own little separate experiences. And somehow I feel that there's a lot to be said for a shared experience, really.
There are some things, we've done one here. We did, for Matariki last year, we did an online thing because it was kind of still level 2 or whatever it was, or level 3 maybe. And we wanted to have, we hadn't explored the idea before, but we did it. We organised it and thought that they would go on individual devices, not individual, but maybe in groups of 2 or 3. And because we wanted to use that polls, you know how on Zoom you can use polls, and thought that was a really great way for them to interact, you know, which would have been quite cool. But in the end, the teacher just couldn't figure it out. Like it was a barrier for her to try and get all of the devices sorted out, and they just all went on one. So it kind of worked out. They were just on one, and we had the poll, and they just one person did it, you know, on that poll. So it kind of worked out okay. But it was, you know, a nice little thing that we'd added in that couldn't really work out. So
it's kind of, like doing things like encouraging them in their group to like put hands up or like figure out, report back the information. Like, but you like, sure, you can use the technology to do that through polls, but actually it's a lot more meaningful for them in the room to be able to like do that for themselves and have the conversation back to you. Is kind of nice, mixing that like hi-fi and lo-fi kind of solutions to things.
Yeah, and using the teacher or another student, I guess, to just do those kind of things inside.
Yeah.
It's quite nice, actually. I like it when you just get the students put their hands up in the classroom, the teacher selects somebody, and then I like it when the student comes to the microphone and asks their own question and has that sense of agency over it. Yeah, I think that's pretty nice.
Cool. Great.
We have done one Virtual Explorer session where it was with a school in Australia that was in lockdown, and the kids were all at home, and so it wasn't going to work for one Zoom link to get to them, but they had their own system they wanted to do, and the teacher basically had us on Zoom, but called all the kids through their channel, and the teacher shared their Zoom screen with the kids. So we had no direct link to them, but we had like a virtual intermediary to all the kids, which was kind of interesting. And so, but it meant that the teacher could do all of that behavior management. And so we never had to manage, because the teacher was really worried that if the kids were on Zoom from home, they would start getting into the Zoom chat and writing stupid things, and and so like the teacher was like, we've got this sorted, and they had the technical expertise that they could manage it through their own process. So
yeah, with the Bangalore one, actually there were 80 students all on their own devices in their own houses, and the teacher at certain points had to say to them very clearly, that's it, there's no more chat going on. It's just
yeah. Obviously,
it's usually related to existing programs that we offer anyway. So yes, I mean with Gallipoli as an example, that's a kind of a discrete exhibition space, and yeah, I suppose that is generally how it works. Though having said that, we've done colonisation and impact, and we've done arrivals. Now those programs are kind of like visit multiple sites within the space, and so they have more of a narrative theme to them that connects the spaces. So Gallipoli is obviously we're in the exhibition, but then, like I said, with arrivals, colonisation, and impact, and probably other examples, there is the connecting theme is what you're dealing with. So you can do it.
Sometimes it's almost nicer as well when you have a kind of narrative theme to a program, we found, because what it allows you to do is to introduce an object, tell its story, and then in your travel time between that object and the next thing, then you can give that as time for the learners to be thinking of questions, or to give them a provocation or a challenge, or get them to turn to each other and talk about something. If you're in one exhibition and everything is basically immediately within your space, sometimes it doesn't give you those kind of time opportunities to be able to fill the gaps and fill the interesting pauses in between stuff, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, if you're transferring, that's something we picked up. If you're moving from one space to another, that gives you a chance, so you can flip the camera back to you if you want. So I'm saying, you maybe ask a question, a provocative question, and get them to consider it, because sometimes we do programs where there's like, you might even be walking downstairs or upstairs, so you've got a bit of time to play with, and so you just kind of like consider, what could I be doing at that point? What's the bridge the narrative bridge that connects these two, which you do physically with students as well. But yeah, you can do it with virtually, maybe with the use of a really good provocative question for them to all think about, you know. So I can say a little bit about that. And yes, they are a standalone experience. Although having said that, I've started to integrate. I've you know, quite interested in how you enlarge this experience and create a more hands-on interactive component. So when I've done them in art in the galleries, I've had the students, I prepped it obviously with the teacher in advance, that the students all have a piece of paper, A4 paper, that's folded into 4, and that they choose, as we're moving around, I've selected some key works that we're going to look at, and they sketch some of those, they sketch those key works, and so they end up, you know, the idea is that at the end of it, they've got almost like a unique artwork, you know, with these 4 either sketches of the whole artwork or little sections of it as a kind of takeaway. And that did, I mean, that was nice, and that did work. It certainly worked initially, but what I found was actually that, you know, actually the experience is good enough by itself. And you'd be surprised, you might think it won't be, but actually if they're projecting you and what you're showing them on a big screen, it's quite powerful. And what I found was that the students started off by doing the art activity, but they drifted off. They didn't actually want to do it. They wanted to actually watch and listen. That's what they wanted to do. They didn't want any other distractions. However, that's in that situation, you know, you could well find, you know, it's for you to work out, you know, whether there is a kind of a related activity that would work really, really well.
We've also been looking at ways of kind of modularizing our programs a bit as well. So the idea that a lot of the in-person programs that we deliver in the museum could have a virtual explorer that could relate to it, or could follow on, or could deepen the knowledge, or could be pre-work. And we have been also, through our own kind of program review process, been thinking about what resources do we have available that we can send to teachers to follow up their experiences with us. So in that way, teachers, if they're engaged and interested enough, a virtual explorer can definitely be one part of a much larger program that they can do with us, where they can kind of mix and match. Maybe they will get down to Wellington at some point in their term, but they're starting their work on a particular topic and they want to come to us to do a virtual explorer around the art galleries, or into Gallipoli, or around Tataya, or whatever it is. And maybe we have online resources, whether it's videos or articles written by curators, or whatever it is for appropriate to the learner's needs, that they can then kind of pick at. Or, I mean, we have so many like digital resources and things as well. So we can, by making those things available, we can kind of control the flow of what the learners need, what the teachers need, to make it part of a bigger holistic offering. It's something we're working on, an approach that we like the idea of. We don't know how much we can encourage schools to really do that. So we're still kind of investigating.
It's that perennial problem of, like, you know, that post-visit activity stuff that, you know, the schools don't do. And so is there some way that you kind of really, you know, because we all want that their experience with us to be meaningful and have some lasting impact. And so one potential way is, yeah, as Donald was saying, is that you kind of could have a Zoom session into the classroom, and maybe the students could present to us, some of the results of their learning, the stimulus that they've had from us. And I kind of like, we're still playing around with that idea. We like it. It's just we haven't quite sort of cemented it yet into a package, but I think we will, because I feel like it's got legs there.
I did a Zoom. I did a Virtual Explorer for Sea Week just on Tuesday with a school up in Rotorua that were this kind of like, I think it was a mix like year 1 to 3 class. And we were talking all about Sea Week and talking about collections and talking about how important they are to the museum. And one of the kids was like, oh, we've been doing collections, we're making collections as well. And a little kid ran to the back of the room and came to the front of the class, to the camera, with this little plastic box, took off the lid, and it was full of amazing multicolored rocks. I'm like, look, this is our collection, we're collecting rocks. And it was just incredibly special that they could see the analog to what the institution is doing as far as collecting examples and of bones and animals and stuff to their own collection of special rocks that they were finding around their school and stuff. We were just like, yes, this is definitely working. And for them to be able to share that with a Te Papa curator, and for him to be like, that's great. Well, how we, these are the information we collect on the things that we collect, so that we know what it is, and for them to kind of take in that information and be like, okay, so we're going to write labels for our rocks. So it's really great. Sweet. Yes, Grace has said that I suspect teachers might have some activities in mind anyway that would link to the topic. Yeah, exactly. When teachers are booking virtual explorers, then we're always asking them what part in their process is this falling into? Is this an initial inquiry, or is this somewhere along the way, and how do we make it specifically fit with the work that you're doing in class, so that we can try on and rely on what the students, what the learners are actually know themselves already, and how we can develop that understanding. So if the teacher's engaged and they're figuring out a good way to make the Virtual Explorer work for them in class, then they're almost certainly intending to use the information to be able to do some kind of activity, do some kind of creation. And saying that, we basically always send teachers a link to the recording of Zoom. And so far, we have basically no evidence that they've ever looked at it, even though every single teacher, when we talk to them about it, is like, this is amazing, thank you so much for the resource, this is great, I can see how useful this is. We send it along, but we have no evidence of any teacher ever clicking on that link. So that's something that we really want to be able to follow up with and actually find out just how they actually use those videos, if they look at them at all. Because they're very good at the time about selling it to us about how useful it could be, and we believe that it's useful. We just want to make sure that it's actually meeting those needs, because if they kind of switch it on and it gets boring or dull or whatever, maybe we need to do something else with it.
I think the teacher in India, in Bangalore, who I was doing the Zoom session in the galleries with 3 weeks ago or so, she it was recorded. And she has used it, but actually that talks to another kind of like advantage of this, is that if they do use the recording, it means that, in 60 minutes, inevitably you're not going to cover everything, and there will be things that, you kind of maybe skimmed over a little bit. But of course, the teacher can actually kind of, use that as a still and actually talk about it. And I think that probably works a little bit more with art, maybe, if you're really wanting to get the students to slow down and look at an artwork. I'm doing it fairly quickly because I've got a lot to cover in 60 minutes. But of course, the teacher can then actually completely just freeze frame to really, really look at an artwork. So that's something worth considering. And maybe there's some more work to be done in terms of kind of selling, upselling that aspect of the session. But yeah, it does seem to work with art a bit more. Yeah.
We haven't talked about it quite so much recently as a team, but we have in the past talked about the creation of social scripts, especially for learners with just additional needs who want to have a better sense of just what's going on, what's going to happen, where are they going, what can they expect, and to be able to do something like create a Zoom video, or use a gimbal and a phone and literally create a little video walkthrough of a space that they can watch before coming. Is a really good way of creating that kind of content. So just a really, it's just a really easy, simple way of making it less anxiety inducing, I guess, for those who might be worried about coming into a museum space or a gallery space or something. So that's like a nice benefit to having the technology available.
I would never show an artwork that had any copyright restrictions or any restrictions on behalf of the estate of the artist anyway, so I just don't go there.
Right.
My information is that you can briefly skim over it in the background, but there is absolutely no way I'm going to go to a Gordon Walters painting, for example. His estate is extremely litigious, and there's no way I'm going to point my camera at that.
Right.
So it's okay. It doesn't prevent you from moving through the space. You don't have to stress too much, but yeah, just avoid them.
Yeah, we're lucky here. We've got some like pretty good people in the Te Papa team who keep us right with those kinds of queries. So we kind of suss it out beforehand. And, yeah, there's areas, especially in our like Taonga Māori gallery, that we can't do virtual explorers through, basically, and that's just by request of the relevant iwi, that they don't want us to film it. They don't want us to make it happen, so we don't. But there's plenty of other content in the museum to be able to explore. So yeah.
I mean, you know best what the status of your taonga and arts are, so yeah.
On our website, we have a whole lot of programs listed, and one of those listings is a virtual explorer. And so generally we've managed to kind of get virtual explorers when we have specifically promoted virtual explorers to New Zealand Teachers Primary or through our own e-news, education e-news, or whatever it is, because then teachers see that as an option and go, oh my goodness, I wasn't even thinking we'd managed to get a school trip in this year, but this is fantastic, or whatever it is. And so they only know about it because we've specifically pointed to it.
Yeah.
I don't think schools, I mean, some schools are starting to think in that way, but I don't think it's at the forefront of their mind as a possibility. Generally, we blow their minds by the fact that we make it possible. And teachers and kids are just like, this is so exciting, we're seeing Te Papa. So it's clearly like a new experience that they're not really thinking is that possible, and we get to make it possible. So
yeah, we charge is it $50 for a class. So it's actually really much cheaper than coming here physically. And what we have had to say is sometimes schools have pushed it a little bit, and we've learned from this. So sometimes schools will put an entire year group or 2-year groups in a big hall and just cram them in. Now, we've sort of found that a bit problematic, because of course, getting people to be responsive and ask questions in that setting is tricky. So we've put, haven't we, as a guideline, this is $50 for a class. We don't want 2 classes coming together, but that's kind of it. Yeah. So, like it could be a syndicate for a small school or whatever, So we think that's fair enough, because actually, you're not paying a great deal of money, and it does, if it's in a kind of theatre style setting, I actually do think kids switch off at that point. Whereas if it's in a classroom setting, kids are engaged.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, because we're not entertaining enough to really captivate 100, 200, 300 people. Like, we're good, but we're not that good. So
it's our movie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we could probably create something that was that good, but we're more
of balloons, probably.
Yeah, maybe like big bangs and stuff. Science, probably science. Yeah, maybe a bit of art, but and so it's like we can do that kind of thing, but we're more interested in the kind of conversation aspect. And I guess it's that sweet spot when you've got a class of kids who have been led by their teacher to be thinking about certain themes and topics and ideas, and that class of kids has a relevant experience through the Virtual Explorer thing, which picks up on the keywords that we and the teacher have been discussing like weeks prior, and so that when we hit those notes, it kind of unlocks those things in the kids' brains. Whereas when we end up with like a whole syndicate of kids, their learning experience like is not necessarily matched in the same way. We have to be a lot more general to meet them all. It is like it ends up starting to be that's like not nearly as relevant to them as a group.
They are learning via screens all the time, of course, and you know, lockdown has increased that too. But I was just thinking back to when things have been one of the more successful aspects of VEs is when you get partner talk going. I was just trying to think of like when, you know, the sessions that have been really cool. And that's when, you know, that's why you don't want too many students together. And then you can ask a big provocative question and get students to partner talk, and then sharing back. You know, that's really improved an experience.
The other really great Virtual Explorer that I did, it was during lockdown, and it was like a level 2 or something, and schools weren't coming in at the time, and the school were really interested in doing things around Pacific navigation, and so I, through a Zoom chat, jumped into their syndicate meeting and took them through using Tinkercad. I don't know if people have used Tinkercad before. It's a free 3D design tool that we use quite a lot here in the lab. And so I basically did a walkthrough with the teachers of the activity that we normally do as the hands-on component of our Pacific Explorers program. And so the teachers understood the tool, they understood what the task was and how it worked. And I sent them some like accompanying video resources to kind of give them more scaffolding. And then I did the Virtual Explorer in the galleries to the kids of the exhibition. And then to the kids, I did a really quick demonstration of using Tinkercad. And then it meant that the teachers in the room and the teaching assistants, they knew how to use the tool, and they could carry on the kind of the creative digital making element, and they could look after that, because there's no way through Zoom that I can solve their problems and help them with that digital making. But I'd given the teachers enough information that they could encourage the kids to do it themselves. And so that was like a whole afternoon for those kids in that school. That I think it was even 2 classes in the room came together and watched it, and then they went into their own classrooms to get computers, and they worked as a pair and did Tinkercad. And the teacher said they were just at Tinkercad for like over an hour. They were just like completely engaged. It'd been enough set up that they had enough ideas that they could continue on that work. But that felt good, because that was us enabling the teachers to enable their students to do that whole process. And they can now, if they want, we can do a VE next year, and they have all the tools and the knowledge now to continue doing that digital creative process at school now as much as they want. So
that's a really good example. And just to put this into your heads, just think about the potential of combining with other organizations that are close to you. And you know, having, you know, because there's nothing to stop you from having another museum or a gallery connect up at the same time, and you know, just think about that as a, you know, potential offer as well.
With things, yeah, with local histories and like interdisciplinary stuff, and like being able to, as organizations, like through Te Putiaki Mana Taonga, like being able to have interesting, engaging conversations between us and a school's like, oh, I really want to know more about this particular topic. And we go, oh, actually, there's that really excellent educator who is at the other end of the country, and this school who's from this other place. We could do a Zoom conference, like 3 different people, sharing hosts, having a conversation between like educators, showing bits of galleries or exhibitions, and sending the students on their way. It's like the power of Zoom when we are up and running with that. Like those are things I mean, Laura does it with City Gallery here in Wellington, but it's in person with school groups that come through. It's like, but that kind of sharing of resources between museums and galleries and stuff is really exciting when we can get it so light in the virtual realm that we can kind of pass them around and really share all of that knowledge. So this has been a really great conversation. I'm really happy to have got to talk to you all about this. It's really exciting, and hopefully more people can figure out how to use a gimbal and a phone, and we can share our wins and our frustrations with each other as time goes on, and we can just keep improving this. Like we've been playing with this for a little while, a couple of years, and we definitely don't know anything great.
Great gimbals.
We don't know everything there is to know about it, and we would love to learn from other people's mistakes as well. So tell us what goes well and tell us what breaks, and hopefully together we will make something awesome.
Maybe we can repeat this, a little further down the line, and you guys can tell us what you've learned, and we can pick up some ideas from you as well. It'd be really great. Thanks, everybody.